Hey, what up guys? Welcome to a new video, and today we're going to be talking about early game dragons. This is, in my coaching, the single most game losing mistake that I see on repeat, game after game, day after day, week after week. I see it every single time. And by preventing this mistake and understanding the concepts behind early dragons, we can actually prevent so many situations in which we would just automatically be put so far behind that the game feels miserable to play. So let's actually take a look at two examples, and I'm going to be detailing the variables that we have to assess so that we can make the right decision about early game dragons. Before we jump into early game dragons, right, and into these examples, what are the characteristics of an early game dragon? What do we actually gain? So an early game dragon is actually an objective that gives us a boost, whatever kind of boost it is. Some dragons are better, some dragons are worse. We got Hextech Dragon, we got Mountain Dragon, we got Ocean Dragon, who are like the best early game dragons. And then we have Fire Dragon, which is also pretty good, and Cloud and Chemtech are not that great. So what do we recognize about these objectives is that they're actually really tanky. After the objective change, that the dragons got way tankier and deal a bit less damage, these objectives take way longer to take, and especially if a jungle tries to solo it, it's usually not really possible. Otherwise, it's going to take them like 30 plus seconds, which is really, really long. And with assistance from multiple people, it can be cut down a little bit, but it still takes a very long time. So that's one of the characteristics of the early game dragons. What kind of stats do they give? They give us like, if it's early game Infernal, it gives us a bit less than the Longsword. So it's about a few hundred gold worth of stacks. So it's a pretty nice objective to have. But we always got to keep in mind, what do we lose when we go for this objective? So I'm going to show you guys a few examples, and I'm going to address the variables in this VODs. So right here, let's actually turn off the sound. What we see in any player. This is Sandy, this is from the Mid Lane Academy. And I've done some coaching with him, and this really stood out to me, not only in this VOD, but also in other VODs that I did with him, is he sacrifices a lot of his lane. And that's exactly what he's doing here, right? He has actually a pretty solid wave if we go back. He has a pretty solid wave state. He teleports bot because he sees a play is about to happen. Kayn dies. They get the kill onto the Aphelios. So alright, pretty decent stuff. And if we're going to take a look at what is going on mid lane right now, is that Victor is actually slow building a wave into us. So if we would be going mid right now, we would be catching like 2.5 waves once we're there. That's so much golden XP that it can just be game changing. It's almost a full level for us at this point in the game. But what do we see right here is Trundle starts this dragon. Why does he start a dragon? Well, it's actually pretty logical because Kayn died, they got the kill on bot lane. And now let's just play it out and see what happens. So Sandy, instead of going mid, actually joins in at this dragon. There's a few hundred damage with some auto attacks. Victor comes here. Sandy tries to zone Victor out. He gets chunked. We get the dragon. And it's a big mess right here. We get the dragon and we die. So now let's actually take a look at what actually happened on mid lane in the meantime. So in the meantime, on mid lane, as we discussed, right, I think he pans his camera right here. Where does he pan his camera? Right here. We already see 2 waves stacking up, which is about 250, 270 gold, depending if he gets the cannon or not. Let alone XP. The XP value is insane here. So we have these 2 waves right here, which are crashing right now. Then we got the next wave coming in as well, which also crashes. And then he's dead. So he also misses some minions from the next wave. So he loses 3.5 waves of XP and gold. And what do we gain? We gain a dragon and we die with it as well. So if we actually continue this VOD right here, we actually see that Sandy is so fucked in lane right now because of how behind he is compared to this Victor, that Victor just takes over and wins the game. Because he's a level up, he's a lot of gold up, and he's a lot of tempo up as well. So Sandy now really, really struggles while playing the game. And they got a dragon for it. Is that worth? In my opinion, no. Let's take a look at another example right here. We got another any vault. And I think this example also shows perfectly why early dragons are so dangerous. Right here, Annie just ulted Ryze, tried to kill him, but Ryze barely got away. They traded flashes. So now Annie has no ult. What do we recognize about Annie versus Ryze? Well, Ryze has way more wave control than Annie. This one is not from Sandy. This is from a different Annie player in the MLA, which I also did a session with recently. And this also shows it very, very nicely. So what do we see? Bot lane has priority, but we cannot get priority in mid because of how Annie versus Ryze works. Ryze just stops the wave. And what we see is Kha'Zix starts the dragon. And our team is also committed at the dragon. We do not have priority, we do not have ult, we do not have flash. Let's just play it out and see what happens. On the minimap, that is. So, enemy team collapses with the priority of Ryze, and Hawken's team dies, and they lose the dragon. This is game-losing play. A game-losing play. And why was this play not good? Well, first of all, they have very low dragon DPS. And the dragon is very tanky, so it takes too long. Second of all, if there's a fight that's coming on, we cannot fight us being Annie right here. We got no ult, we got no flash, we got no wave control. So it's impossible for us to be on time here for a fight. So this guy should have called the dragon off. Similar as Sandy last game, should have called the dragon off. We have to prioritize what we want to do in that case. So what are the downsides of starting an early dragon? I'm gonna try to draw it here in the middle of this. Wait, you guys actually don't see this. Let me do it like this. All right, so what are the downsides of starting an early dragon? Let's take a look here. So first of all, it takes a lot of time. And time is efficiency in League, because if we are spending time on a dragon, we are not farming, we're not getting any other XP, we're not getting vision. So time is very valuable. That's what an early dragon does. It's also high risk. Right, the risk is really high. And if we get collapsed upon or there's a skirmish coming, usually we lose because we're damaged by the dragon. So the risk is very high as well. Now let's take a look at the rewards for the early dragon. Well, we get some nice stats, but that's about it. So we always gotta understand when we can and cannot do an early dragon. So in my experience, if we are talking about a dragon between the minute 5 to 7, right? I would say those are game-losing dragons. You rather lose the game upon a play like this than win the game upon a play like this. Because it takes too long, so we lose too many resources, we lose too much time, the risk is too high, and the only time that you can actually go for an early dragon like this is when you have both priority in mid lane, both priority in bot lane, you know where enemy jungle is, and you have DPS on the dragon. In my opinion, those are the only times where we can start an early dragon up for free and can actually make a good use out of it. Otherwise, what I would recommend is that you guys call off the play. Because an early dragon doesn't necessarily win us the game. That's the mindset that I want you guys to have. So if we go for an early dragon, it's a nice bonus, but it's not a game-winning bonus. It's a good thing, but it's not too high impact. We can still lose a lot if we get first dragon. So that's the real thing that I want you to understand. Yes, it has upsides, but it's not game-winning. But if we mess it up, if we mess the early dragon up, and it goes real bad, then I want you to understand that it's usually a play that can lead us to instantly lose the game. Because not only is jungle going to be behind, mid is going to be behind, bot is going to be behind. and there's even the chance that we lose the dragon. So how do we come back from this? Well, of course, hoping the enemy makes mistakes, but which they always will do, by the way. But still, we'd rather not be in a position so behind if we can prevent it that easily. That's going to make our games a lot more streamlined and a lot more easier. And that's exactly what I want to achieve, is I want to make sure that my games are consistent and they're in my control. And if I, for example, as in this first vault right here, if I sacrifice 3.5 waves just for this dragon, game is not in my control anymore. No more lane pressure, right? I'm down two behind to skirmish. I've got nothing to say. I cannot be proactive. And those are the situations that you want to rather avoid in game. Because then the games are going to be out of your control, and that's not what you want. You want to have as much control in the game as possible. And that means that we gotta value resources and time over a potential buff that can help us. So the final note that I want to have on this early dragon situation is that the risk versus reward ratio, that's what that's what I'm working on here. The risk reward ratio is just not in our favor. The risk is high, the reward is very medium. And the only time that we can actually go for a play like this is when the risk is low and therefore the reward is also medium. Then it's certainly a good play. And the variables for us to understand that the risk is low is push in both lanes, vision of enemy jungler, and making sure that we don't lose any other big resources on the map. These are the things that you want to be looking for. If any of these, right, are uncertain, you must understand that the call is a flip. If you want to flip for whatever reason, go ahead. If it goes wrong, you can always recognize it in the review and check, okay, what was the variable that I missed? Another thing, I'm sorry, I forgot DPS. If we would like to have some dragon DPS. If we have Ziggs bot together with Yuumi, and we have any mid and I don't know, another jungler as well that doesn't have a lot of DPS. Yes, we can have Shove in both lanes, but because of our low DPS, it's going to take too long and the enemies have too much time to respond. Right, there's so much time for the enemies to respond to a dragon like this, and that's what makes it extremely, extremely dangerous. So be very careful with these early dragon guys. I would like you guys to call them off more often than not, and only if the situation is looking good, then you can actually make the call to go for it or play it. Post minute 8, it usually changes because then people get more DPS in their kit, and then we can actually usually fight these dragons or do them way quicker, and that's more efficient for the game state and for us as a team. So if you guys have any questions about this, right, which this can be a pretty complicated topic, feel free to ask me those in the comments. I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys real soon. Bye bye.